Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the Women's Eye podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Gualandi. Who wants to build their money power or keep building their money power? Well, our financial expert, Catherine Scrivano, is here with me. Hello, Catherine. Welcome
Hi,
back.
Stacy. Thank you. Glad to be here.
This is great. Now we're going to be, it's a tough subject, divorce, but we're going to be
Mhm.
talking about a new kind of divorce and the financial fallout that happens. So we're going to be delving into a whole new area today. So gray divorce. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
It is, it's quite a thing. We wouldn't have even thought about segregating, perhaps is not the right word, but really focusing on the age at which people divorce. But gray divorce is kind of the most uh, predominant form of divorce right now.
It's
Divorces in general have gone down, and gray divorce, those are over 50, has gone up quite a bit.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're going to explore the whys and what to do's. But first, this episode of our Building Money Power series is brought to you by Catherine and Catherine's Casco Financial Group in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, she started her business to help people create the financial strength to achieve their dreams and doesn't stop. But now, in the past, we have discussed the financial fallout post divorce right here on the podcast. But as you said, there is an increasing conversation surrounding how to adjust to your life after a gray divorce, or in some cases, like before a gray divorce. Let's just jump right in. It may be obvious, but Catherine, what exactly is gray divorce?
That this is a term coined by someone with more authority than me. I'm not sure that's the name I would have chosen. However, it is used to segregate and study the effects and some of the planning opportunities around couples who divorce after the age of 50.
And this is a
Because
number, is this on the rise? Is
it
this
really
increasing?
it's quite dramatic. I think something like there's a study out of Purdue University that indicated that out of all divorces filed in the last few years, 40% of them, pardon me, are filed by people over age 50. So it
Wow.
used to be kind of something young and the stress of life, et cetera, as you're growing and changing. But now long-term marriages very often, because our life expectancies are longer, people in their later years are thinking about quality of life decisions, and perhaps an unsatisfying relationship needs to end because they're going to live for another 40 years
And
and they
they're
want to
just
make sure
thinking like,
it's,
no, this is not,
yeah.
this is not what I'm picturing. Wow.
Interestingly enough, in our practice, this is purely coincidental. I promise you, we don't seek these kinds of things out, but we have recently helped some folks go through what would be considered a gray divorce. And the impetus for filing and initiating the whole process was the idea of caregiving. Because I'll just use myself as an example. If I am in an unsatisfied relationship, the prospect of living with this person for a long time.
Oh,
And because I am the female in my relationship, statistically likely I would outlive my partner and probably provide caregiving for him at the end of his life. And perhaps that's not something I would choose to do. So
interesting.
I,
So
I think
that's how
that's
it
real interesting.
directly, yeah, it directly affects women in that way.
Uh-huh.
The likelihood is that the women live longer. Wow, I didn't
The
even
women
think
tend
about
to
that.
live longer and we tend to be the caregivers. Now, I can't stress enough that that's not always the case. That's certainly not boilerplate. But if you look at numbers, which is what I love to do all day, the likelihood of a woman outliving her partner and be the caregiver at the end of their life are higher. And so this is very much a women's issue, thinking about how to, once you've made that decision that that's the choice that you're going to go forward with, thinking about the consequences of that choice.
But also too, I imagine with women that their standard of living would drastically change too. once
Both,
entering
again,
and
the numbers, here I come with numbers,
yeah, we
but
love the numbers though.
women definitely bear the brunt of this. Their standard of living tends to fall by more than 40%, while men generally their standard of living declines about 20%.
Oh,
Both are likely to see their net worth divided in half, so they would lose about 50% of what was on paper before. But the lifestyle, the standard of living, the ability to pay your bills, get out of the grocery store with things that you want to put in the basket,
yes.
make your mortgage payments, etc., and have a fulfilling life. Women see that decline a lot more than men.
So that's why it's really important to understand certain things that you need to do, perhaps maybe even before going into the lawyer's office, or at least when you leave the lawyer's office. But what is something that you would really want people, women, obviously, but clients to understand? Um,
Well, I think that sometimes the idea, the relief of being out of a unfulfilling relationship may be so great that you kind of don't think about the pragmatic and practical consequences. And I'm not here to judge how marriages or relationships work or don't work, but I am here to say, let's face reality and just without emotion. I know that's
yes,
a tough thing at this time because it's a
it's like you
very
have to
high emotional time.
compartmentalize, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And think about, okay, what are the consequences? What are the effects of this decision going to be on my finances, both in the short term and in the long term? Thinking through those things, there's going to be decisions to be made and consequences to those decisions. So as you and your former spouse start dividing property and talking about things like alimony or child support or any number of things, thinking about the long-term consequences of the decisions that you make.
Yeah. And obviously touching on what you've just said, but the importance too is that there are certain steps you need to consider before you actually maybe file for divorce,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
that's yeah.
Well, certainly as you negotiate, a divorce is a legal process and there's going to be negotiation and a settlement agreement. And before you commit to that settlement agreement, you need to know what the effect of those choices will be. The first step, of course, is always figuring out where are you right now? What
Gotcha.
assets do you hold? What assets does your spouse hold? What kinds of things do you own jointly? Focusing on assets is one thing, but also thinking about your obligations, because chances are very good you're going to walk away with some of the debt. And how will you meet those? And again, an opportunity for negotiation. Perhaps you give up some assets in exchange for being relieved of some of the liabilities. I mean, I'm not saying that that's a great idea for everyone, but it's an option.
It's something to consider, because
Yeah.
a lot of times you wouldn't even realize, like you've yes, as a team, perhaps you did incur
Mhm.
some some losses or things that you have to pay back, so
And when talking about debt, I have a very important message that so many people don't know until they're on the wrong end of this conversation, is that just because you have negotiated and agreed with your former spouse that they will pay certain things, if you
mhm.
have signed onto that obligation, the creditor still is going to hold you responsible.
Oh,
You
really?
you made
Okay.
a deal with the bank saying, I will borrow this money and I will pay it back. The fact that in a divorce decree, they said that your your former spouse is supposed to pay it. The bank has no obligation to honor that. The deal was with you and the bank.
Okay.
So part of your negotiation, should you include a provision where they are paying for whatever the obligation is, part of that negotiation includes them taking legal responsibility, going and renegotiating the debt so that it's only between them and the creditor, that you're out of it completely.
Yeah, it's just always thinking about how to protect yourself. But and I'm thinking about this too. But a lot of this involves, it's very much a lifestyle change for a lot of
Hmm.
women, and maybe you've got the big house, but maybe that's something that you shouldn't be as attached to, or that you're going to have to make some changes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's where the numbers kind of can protect us from ourselves if we're willing to let them prevail. We as humans, I'm certainly not going to pick on women at all, but we as humans tend to have sentimental attachments. This is the home where I raised my children. This
yes,
is where I want to live. And that might be fine when there's two incomes and two resources. If that goes away and you're wholly responsible for that mortgage, because remember, you're going to need to refinance it so that mortgage is only in your name. Are you going to be able to afford the payments, the upkeep, all of
yeah,
the maintenance, all of the insurances and taxes, etc.? And if you're able to, terrific. If you're able to, but have to sacrifice other things, it's good to just have that conversation with yourself and say,
yeah.
is this a
They might say,
worthwhile
forget the
sacrifice?
sentimental.
Yeah,
I'm getting rid of it.
exactly.
That might
And
that might change somebody's mind right away, I would
right,
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we do it's hard to during this time of high emotion to let your brain take over.
yeah. And
But
leave the heart.
yeah, just
Back.
put the
Yeah.
heart aside right now because again, this is always fraught. It's always there's never an easy split. There are less hard splits, and that is what I wish for anyone going through it, but it's never going to be simple. But thinking about the long-term consequences, because again, when our emotions are high, we have a tendency to just say, okay, make it stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever it is that's making me this stressed, I just want it to go away. Where do I sign? But I
Exactly.
would encourage you to take a step back. This is a time when a professional can really be helpful because they're going to be pragmatic. They're not angry at your ex-spouse.
Very
They're not
objective. Yeah.
attached to the house, etc., that they can help you just walk through it very stoically. And
Yes.
ultimately, the decision is yours, but please make decisions based on information and fully aware rather than the just make it stop.
Yeah.
That's a definite vulnerability.
You mentioned about focusing on getting somebody like an expert such as yourself to help guide yourself through the process, and that's just one of several areas that you like to focus on
Mhm.
when advising somebody. But it's like you're dealing with budget, goals, debt, credit, insurance, beneficiaries and estate, the IRS, and of course, like I said, hiring an expert to guide you. So, how important is it to literally start right off with creating a budget, perhaps
Well,
maybe for the first time?
yeah. I think that's a great place to start because that's a real reality check. And as in the past, I prefer not to think of it as a budget because just that word has some
Yeah,
negative connotation. It implies I'm going to suffer, and for
it
God's
makes you
sake,
want to
I'm
walk the other
suffering
way.
enough already. But think of it as a spending plan. You're actually by going through this whole ordeal, you're making a life plan. Think about your dollars and how you're going to spend them to support that life plan. And once again, if you are able, I know this is not an easy assignment, but
Yeah,
sit down and acknowledge what income is going to be coming in, whether that's all yours, perhaps there's alimony or child support involved, could be any number of things, but realistically, what is the income going to be? What will your expenses to be to maintain the lifestyle that you ultimately decide to have? And from there, you can prioritize. I think the first thing when we look at spending plans is to divide our expenses between fixed. I mean, these things are going to happen. We're going to have to pay for a roof over our head,
yeah, you can't
utilities,
fight
those
it.
kinds of
Yeah.
things.
Mm-hmm.
And then those that are discretionary. And you may find that those are places where you can cut back without too much trouble. But I do encourage you, don't be too draconian because you need to have a little comfort here. So if there's a hobby or a pleasure that costs a few dollars and provides you some comfort and outlet, I'm a fan. Find a way to work that into the spending plan if at all possible.
And then it can always dip in and dip out. Like I guess it's like you
Sure.
don't have to do it all in one sitting. You
Right.
can,
Oh, exactly. That's a
you know,
great point. Yeah.
yeah, because
Start,
I think sometimes
walk
that's
away, cool
overwhelming.
down. Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah, to be able to do that. But um, will someone's goals likely change in the event of a divorce after
It
50 or later in?
Yeah, in our experience, presuming that the couple are both age 50 or beyond, there's probably been a lot of emphasis in recent years about retirement and what retirement lifestyle will look like. Now that's going to be a solo endeavor.
Wow.
So
Hmm.
perhaps you were making some concessions about what retirement looked like that you no longer have to make. You're not a big fan of cruises, but your spouse loved them, so you were going to be going on cruises. Now you don't have to go. But what are you going to do instead?
Yeah.
So you're going to realign your retirement goals, your life goals, and then as always, we always put a dollar value on those. Say what will it take to achieve them, and then develop the strategy to get there. But the default as a couple is going to be uprooted, and here's your chance to define, what you consistent, what you still want to do, and what things that you'll do differently.
Yeah. And I wonder if cruises could have been the source of the divorce. No, just kidding. I'm not a big cruise fan, but also too, I mean, it could involve maybe going back to school or,
Oh,
I imagine certain things, doors will open on some level, but which would
well,
also
many
bring adjusting for how do I pay for this and do this and all that kind of stuff too.
so many times people, the impetus for the divorce is the urge for fulfillment in the latter half of their life, and that may deviate. That may mean moving. Maybe you want to leave the state. Maybe you want to live where someplace else, closer to or farther away from family might be a motivator. um, Education is absolutely a big part of people redefining themselves, career changes, or just pursuing things that were interesting and you didn't feel like you had the time before because you needed to pay attention to this other person. So there's great opportunities there. There's generally a financial component to everything I just said.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
in your spending plan, you'll identify those.
Yeah, it makes me think too, like, gosh, the numbers are increasing, but that I wonder too if people wait till their kids are grown up and out the door, and then they're like, oh, okay, that maybe is a
Very
part of
often.
it as well.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. But and we talked about this briefly, but just in terms of debt, yeah, you really, whether it's your debt, his debt, our debt,
Right.
that is something really important to assess ahead of time.
So
What's that dollar amount, right?
yeah, and so as you are gathering data, as we do, before we look at the numbers and make judgments about the numbers, we have to collect the numbers. And it's critical that you run a credit report on yourself, see what obligations you have, and hopefully have your soon-to-be ex do the same and exchange that information because they may have debt that you don't know about,
Oh,
but that here in Arizona, we're a community property state, so it's entirely possible that you may have an obligation. It's possible that you don't, but you want to know beforehand
you don't want
and
any
make sure that
surprises. Yeah.
no, the time to find out about that is not 2 years from now when you get, the call from the debt collector.
Yeah. How
So you want to
scary.
have all the facts and know what you're doing, and your credit report is an important piece of that.
Yeah. And working obviously with a professional too to help with refinancing or anything that you need to
Mhm.
do to be able to offset that debt. I mean, that could be a really rude awakening, I imagine, for some,
Well, it is, like I
unexpected.
say, I've seen it so many times that people say, no, that's not my obligation. It was settled in the divorce decree that my former spouse will pay.
Yeah.
And they get the rude awakening that the financial institution has no obligation to honor your divorce decree. That's between you and your former spouse. They made an arrangement with you, you're obligated, and they'll come to you for payment.
Yeah. And this is, and you're seeing this more come through your office as well in terms of this kind of divorce,
Well, we
right?
certainly have seen
An
increases
increase. Yeah.
in helping folks. For years, we have helped people do the numbers and look at the considerations of consequences of choices in divorce. But the area of gray divorce has become more prevalent, and some of it is our aging practice and our aging clients, but also it's just more common.
More common. Yeah. What about someone's credit? Because a divorce could potentially affect your credit
Hmm.
adversely. So
Oh,
you want to
sure.
be, yeah. So what do we do in terms of, yeah, protecting and rebuilding our credit?
Well, just like anything else, you're going to be sure that you can pay the obligations for which you've assigned, but talking to creditors and letting them know that there's
Uh-huh.
less income coming into the household, you still intend to pay, but can you renegotiate your terms?
Okay.
Uh,
Speaking
yeah.
to a human,
Yes.
right? Not so much, don't talk to the AI.
Don't talk to the AI. They don't know.
Yeah.
But
But people, yes, where you can establish some sort of relationship
yeah,
with creditors
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, and being upfront and proactive that if you're going to need some forbearance for a little while, your creditors are going to be much happier to work with you on that kind of an arrangement rather than debt collection later on when they may not get anything.
Yeah. But I guess if you're on your own or going to be on your own, it's kind of like don't go crazy in terms of, starting to build up trying to build your credit, but could potentially put yourself underwater too.
Well, you're giving me the opportunity to tell you how much I hate retail therapy again, aren't you?
Yeah, I know.
Yes, I know you're going through a really rough time. My heart, my sympathy is with you. There's nothing easy about this, and it will not be solved by overspending,
Yeah.
by shopping and buying and gifting. We see people who start competing for the affection of their children.
Oh,
I want them to be on team mom and they want them to be on team dad, and spending kind of gets irrational. So this is what I was talking about earlier. We're going through a tough, tough time. Our hearts are hurting and we want to just feel better. Um, let the numbers work for us, not against us.
okay.
And
I love that.
realize, yeah, it's an easy trap to fall into.
I love that. Let him work for us, not against us for sure. But, and of course, I hate, the I word insurance, but obviously that's a big part of it and a lot of considerations, when it comes to what type of insurance do you want to get and what not to get. And just to make sure you're protected,
Well,
you know.
you have undoubtedly insurance coverage right now, whether it's your auto insurance, your homeowners insurance, or renters insurance, your health insurance. All of those are going to be impacted by your status as a single individual. Not
Mhm.
necessarily negatively impacted, but there's going to be a difference. And again, as you're gathering data, getting ready to make decisions, make sure that there's an awareness there. One thing that I think is really critical is life insurance. It may very well be a part of a divorce decree in which one party is going to be paying alimony or child support or some kind of continuing payment to the other person. What if they die?
Yeah.
So having life insurance in place on that person makes great sense. It's a very common solution, very, very common. But here's the key that people tend to forget is, let's say that I'm going to be collecting payment from you, and therefore we agree we're going to buy life insurance on you so that if you die, I continue to receive the payments. However, if you own the policy, you can cancel it at any time. I have no
Ah,
control. So as we negotiate this solution, I want to be sure I am the owner of that policy.
I
Who
gotcha.
pays the
Okay.
premium? That's a point of negotiation, but I
Negotiation. Right, right,
definitely
right.
want to
Yeah.
be
But you want
the
to be the
owner
owner. Hmm.
because I want to be sure that it's enforced. Even if we agree that you will pay the premiums and you stop doing it, I can at least have the opportunity to continue to make the premium payments and keep that coverage enforced. But if I'm not the owner, I have no control at all.
Yeah. And that's you just this is not a time to be relinquishing any
No,
kind of
no,
any kind
it's
of control. And obviously
well,
with insurance too and any of those things, it's important to be looking out to for your beneficiaries if there
you,
are, but also and
eh,
just reestablishing your estate
well,
documents too.
your insurance, your wills, trusts, all of those documents probably need to be rewritten. Presumably, you will replace your ex-spouse as your primary beneficiary, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Again, circumstances are different. Maybe that is still the person that you trust to settle your estate, and you would like to have them continue to be the personal representative or executor. But the law generally does not assume that to be the case. So if you don't update or restate, there may be lengthy probate and it just may be more complicated for those that you leave behind than it needs to be. So revisiting those documents, replacing presumably your soon-to-be former spouse as the beneficiary, or restating that you want to continue to have them as the beneficiary. It's just part of the process, but something to think through.
Hmm. And the IRS too. There's always IRS or the
Yeah,
tax man coming, right? Yeah.
your tax status has just changed, hasn't it? You're no longer married filing jointly. You're now
Yes.
single. Perhaps you will remarry. That's a whole different conversation. But for this time right now, as you're thinking of all the considerations in preparing for divorce, consider the income tax consequences of now being a single person.
Yeah. And, ideally you hope that as a couple, that you are communicating and, how that can work somehow as a team. It's hard, obviously, very hard. But to work as a
It is hard.
team, but also to work with professionals such as
Yeah,
yourself. Yeah.
I don't think there's any chance of going through a divorce that's not stressful and sad. I mean, that's just built in, but it doesn't have to be adversarial.
Hmm.
And again, if you can think as you negotiate these parts of your new life, if you're doing it from a position of fairness and taking the emotion out of it, just
Out of
seeing what the
it. Yeah.
numbers are. And for my clients, one of the things that seems to me that we have to restate is think of the long term, because there may be a negotiation or a solution that really satisfies a short-term need,
Right.
but long-term may be detrimental. For instance, you may agree to, uh, I don't know, a higher child support payment rather than attaching their employer plan at work. I'm just making that up out of thin air. But the consequence of that is the kids are going to grow up and go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is a finite time period to that child support arrangement or the alimony arrangement, whatever you decide. Think beyond those years, and perhaps it's more auspicious to do something a little less now, but over a longer period of time.
Just to protect yourself in the long run,
Yeah,
really. I mean,
yeah,
and not, not knowing anything that might transpire, whether it's married again or anything, but it's just protecting yourself for the
yeah.
long run too. So obviously, you said taking the emotion out of it is obviously number one, probably the hardest thing. But are there other, if you were to name the other top three things for people to remember when if you should find yourself getting a divorce in your later years?
Well, I think the most important thing is I'm kind of restating what you said about taking the emotion out of it, the that which is an impossible assignment,
Yeah.
but making the emotion not such a huge factor if we're looking for revenge or manipulation or all of those kinds of things. It seems like those always backfire.
Yeah.
And so not being impulsive, you know, come up with an idea, come up with a potential solution, and then put it away for a little bit and come back and revisit. Again, I don't mean to tout my profession, extraordinarily. Certainly people can do this themselves, but part of the value of having an uninvolved party who can bring up things like, yes, this is a short-term fix, but there's a long-term consequence that you may not want to face. All of those kinds of things. Let us number nerds look at the numbers,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you can translate that to your lifestyle. Once you know what those numbers are, what kind of a lifestyle will those dollars be able to support? And then you can make good decisions. And frankly, what we've seen, and wasn't too long ago that we had kind of a surprise reunion of a formerly married couple. They came in together. And part of it is that they credit is that they had such a thoughtful settlement process.
Oh,
They were, and so it's not something coming up that was unexpected a couple years later. They really did try to be fair and try and make sense of it, and they have a pretty good relationship still as a
as a
result.
result, yeah. Even
And
though they, weren't happily ever after,
yeah,
but at least,
marriage wasn't right. Yeah, that wasn't the right relationship for them, but they've been able to maintain good relationships with each other's families, with their kids. Those were the things that were right for them and important for them.
yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they were very, very thoughtful about the legal divisions that accompany a divorce.
No, I mean it's got to be the toughest thing. I mean, divorce at any time, but in this case, there the way to deal with it is different for those later
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
Well, for instance, later in life, we are more reliant on Social Security benefits.
Hmm.
And many times people don't realize that they are entitled to file on their ex-spouse's record. Does not diminish the benefit that the ex-spouse receives. But if you were married 10 years or more,
Yeah.
then there may be additional benefits available to you through Social Security. Again, does not diminish the other person's benefit at all. They don't even have to know about it,
Yeah.
but it's one of the considerations.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, obviously a lot to consider, but it's the way you've just step by step, there is a process and there is a
Mhm.
way through this
There is.
effectively. Yeah.
Yeah, there really is.
Wonderful. Well, Catherine, thank you so much once again. It's always great to see you and to learn, and hopefully nobody has to take a decision or go in this direction, but certainly there's help if you need it. So thank you
But
so much.
on the other hand, maybe it is the right move for you and you've been too afraid to do it because of the money issues. And I would strongly encourage you face those issues. It's not a commitment to divorce. It's just gathering your facts.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
you may decide that really your quality of life would be better served, and presumably everyone involved
Yeah.
will be better served as a result. But that only became, even available to you because you gathered the information.
Yeah. And it just never hurts to have all of the information there for yourself,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
So, well, thank you, Catherine, so much once again to learn more about Catherine Scrivano and her financial tips. Just go to thewomenseye.com, and there also you will find our books. 20 women storytellers and 20 women change makers. Just go to thewomenseye.com/books. And don't forget, subscribe to our newsletter, YouTube channel. Let us know any questions and likes and dislikes. We would love to hear from you. Again, thank you, Catherine, and to
Thank
all
you,
of you.
Stacey.
It's great to see you. And to all of you for tuning into the Women's Eye podcast. Just keep building your money power with us. I'm Stacey Gualandi. Remember, it's the world as we see it.